Welcome back. Breaking news coverage as we look at Jerusalem, Israel, now in the target of the Iranian response that will certainly be coming. 5:37 in the morning in Jerusalem. The Iranians have promised a devastating strike, counterstrike on Israel after an overnight bombing campaign by Israel that they promised to continue for multiple days to take out Iran's nuclear program. The Israelis have already succeeded in eliminating much of Iran's command and control. The head of the Iranian Revolutionary Guard was killed in a targeted strike. Their nuclear scientists targeted. And this perhaps is the most significant video you will see today. The black plume of smoke coming up over Natanz, which was Iran's main nuclear facility. There are many nuclear facilities in Iran. The Iranians have been planning for an Israeli strike for as long as the Israelis have been planning to strike Iran's nuclear facilities. With us on the panel, Jim Hanson, U.S. Army Special Forces veteran, chief editor of the Middle East Forum; Joel Rubin, former Deputy Assistant Secretary of State under President Obama; Mick, Mulvaney, former White House Chief of Staff; Senator Markwayne Mullin as well, of the great state of Oklahoma. In the break, we were talking, gents, about why we have not yet seen the Iranian response. My supposition here is because the Israelis took out much of the Iranian command structure, number one, their communications as well. Part of this is to scare the Iranians that we know, in terms of the Israelis, where everybody is sleeping. So you get the Iranians arguing with each other, and that paralyzes, Senator Mullin, their military.
It does, but it also, the Iranians can't get out there and lose this fight. What are they going to launch? Israel's controlling the airspace right now. They've obviously showed they can break through their air defense. And they're not worried about the ballistic missiles. We've heard Ted Cruz go out there a while ago, and he's rightfully so. They have a tremendous amount of arsenal of ballistic missiles, but at the same time, we have David's Sling, we have the Iron Dome, and we have the aerial missile defense that is setting in Israel, and ballistic missiles are the easiest ones for us to track. They're much easier to track than drones. They've also shot a tremendous amount of weaponry over the last 6 months that Israel and the others that control the airspace around Israel that the Iranians have to come through has decimated.
So here's my question, Markwayne. Is it the Iranians are not responding right now? Is that because they can't or they choose not to?
I think they choose not to. They can't take a defeat. They would love to, but where are they going to go up in the air? And how could they, right? As I said, Israel's controlling the airspace. If they launch something right now and they get whipped.
I just wonder if they don't have the ability to, because part of me says,
I think
look,
a part of it.
The command and control is maybe so shot that they don't have the ability to actually do it. But even if they did, I'm sitting there thinking, why not go ahead and use these things before the Israelis destroy them?
We know there's multiple waves, right? So there was the first wave that took out the air defenses. We also understand that there were some Israeli special operations and intelligence assets doing sabotage inside Iran on this night. Jim, I see you nodding along and smiling.
Well, my question is, we said we weren't part of the strike. Are we going to be part of the defense when Iran does launch? Because we have been previously. When the exchange happened last year, when Iran launched all of the drones and missiles and everything that they had, we shot a lot of those down. All right, there were U.S. fighter planes shooting them down. Our air defense stuff took them out. I'm assuming that we would not deny Israel that protection if Iran retaliates. It would surprise me if we don't, but that's going to be a big question when this actually does come, and it's gonna come.
So I would answer that as I believe we will, because the amount of troops they got to fly over to get from Iran to Israel,
of America,
yes, we have assets between those two locations, and we also have friends in those locations. I believe we will be forced to, because we control a lot of the airspace. We control a lot of the airspace too between those two. And if we control the airspace, then we have to defend that airspace.
So just now from the Iran's military spokesman, somehow they were able to get this out overnight. Israel's attacks were aided by the U.S. They will pay a heavy price and should expect a severe response from Iran's armed forces. Joel, I'm going to turn this around. Because there is so much of, and now a lot of this from the right even, oh, this is going to be World War III, this is going to be World War III. The last time the Iranians were really punched in the nose was by President Trump under his first term when he took out Qasem Soleimani. Now, that was one general, that was one time. But the Iranians took it because they realized that if they struck U.S. assets and got into a war with the United States, they would lose their regime in their country. At some point, might the Iranians be forced, if this attack by Israel is as devastating and well-planned and continued as it seems to be, that they can't respond because they realize that annihilation is their only option?
You know, Leland, look, there are, I think, two very key variables to consider in this question. First of all is the changed strategic environment, the actual on-the-ground military capacity that Iran has. It's been eviscerated over the past year. Hezbollah in Lebanon, eviscerated. That was their hedge against this kind of strike that we saw tonight. That's gone. Clearly, Hamas decimated inside of Gaza. The Houthis are an irritant, but they're not a direct, massive threat. And, of course, Assad falling in Syria. So Iran doesn't have many cards to play. But I do think it's very important. If President Trump wants to get ahead of this and wants to ensure that American assets are not struck, he needs to get out and put that message down firmly that there will be major retaliation. Because if he does not, and if American troops are struck, he will then be on retreat. And this is a major,
we've heard this from...
Do you really need to send that message again? I mean, it doesn't hurt to do it.
I don't think he sent it tonight. I think that
Rubio
Secretary
said
Rubio said we have nothing to do with this.
I think
but the end of that statement says, and if they go after the Americans, it's trouble.
It's very clear what we will do.
Yeah,
well,
yeah.
so if you're the Iranians and you take that into consideration, just putting all this together, they have very little operating room, and I think that's the bottom line.
Two things that have just happened right now. D.C. police have now cordoned off a huge area around the Israeli embassy. Now, whether that is because they fear that the Iranians have either sleeper agents or the ability to respond in the United States says a lot. Number two, that the largest medical center in Israel, in Tel Aviv, has opened its emergency underground hospital and transferred their patients down. The Israelis have their normal hospitals above ground, and then when they build a hospital down deep underground, parking garages that they can turn into makeshift hospitals in the event of war. We saw that after October 7th. We're seeing that again now. Jim, I don't think we can stress in real terms, but I keep thinking sort of the extraordinary nature of the Israelis that don't have long-range bombing capabilities. It's not like the United States that have B-2s and B-52s and B-1s and everything else. They've got F-16s, F-15s, and F-35s flying at the longest range they have in multiple waves, taking out and taking apart the Iranian military.
Mm-hmm. And the nice thing about that...
And what we're watching is extraordinary. There will be books written.
It's a truly impressive thing. I mean, they've done some of the greatest long-range raids in history. Look at Entebbe, the greatest commando raid anyone's done ever. And what they did this time, they may not have hit everything, they may not have taken everything out, but they damaged it enough that they can follow on and take out the rest of it. And one thing to think about, Joel brought up a good point. The Iranian military is not an expeditionary force.
That's right.
They can't roll tanks on anybody.
Right.
If they tried to roll tanks, they wouldn't make it to their own border.
No.
Right.
All right, so nobody's in danger of a war with Iran. Asymmetric activity like terrorism, like missile strikes, like all of the things they can do, blowing up ships in the straits, that's going to happen to whatever extent they can. And everyone knows that. Those are known things that we're all prepared for. But there's not going to be a war in Iran, regardless of the howling from a lot of people who are saying that's the result of this.
Exactly.
Just one update here. Israeli Air Force has also struck the heavy, A-R-A-K, heavy water production plant. So the waves are continuing.
Really?
Yeah.
I mean, the plutonium facility, so they're really going all in, and that was the...
Well, and Prime Minister Netanyahu has said this is going to go on for days. At what point,
sweep.
I understand this point that, and you've made it over and over, take you not only at your word, but also you are as close to the administration as anyone gets in Congress and in the Senate, that the United States was not involved. Fine. At what point will the United States, actually I shouldn't say what point, the United States will have to start resupplying Israel pretty quickly here with weapons. That is the bunker busters, that is missile defenses, that is aircraft parts, on and on and on. Then the United States does kind of become involved, doesn't it?
Well, yes, if they want to put it that way, but at the same time, Israel's always been our ally. We've always been able to sell arms to them, and we will continue to do so. We will continue to restock them as long as it's really in both of our interests, and which it is right now. It's in our interest. But I think a good point that was just made is Iranians, they don't have the capability to have an all-out war. When was the last time they actually fought?
Iran, Iraq.
Right. And how well did that go?
Not well.
Not good.
That's a good point. I want to give, just from the military's perspective, Lieutenant General Richard Newton standing by, U.S. Air Force retired, Glenn Ignacio, retired Air Force Special Operations Commander as well. General, start with you. How surprised are you at the Israelis' ability to project force, not once, but multiple times? And what it appears so far is that they have gained air superiority over a country 1,000 miles away.
Well, Leland, I'm not surprised at all. I've seen the Israeli Air Force in action, and I go back to, and we've been talking about this tonight, go back to the attack, the counterattack that Israel conducted on October 26th. They did that in 3 waves, and we've heard tonight there's 1 wave, perhaps more to come. But those 3 waves, I think, should have really earmarked what the Israelis are capable of doing and what their playbook would be moving forward from October 26th all the way here until June of 2025. First, go after Iranian air defenses, which they did extraordinarily effectively. Then go after their command and control. Take their eyes away from their air defenses as well as the leadership. And then third, then they went after their ballistic missile capabilities. My sources tell me degraded Iran's ballistic missiles back October 26th, almost up to 50%. So this is really out of the Israeli playbook. They've really leaned on their Air Force significantly. I think they'll continue to do so. Frankly, I'm not surprised by this or the capability.
Well, not only lean on their Air Force, but also lean on their intelligence assets. I mean, the idea of being able to target where these generals were sleeping and where these nuclear scientists were sleeping is extraordinary.
And let's not forget also their special forces, Leland, as well, certainly.
Yeah. This now, when we don't know yet about whether there was SF components flown into Iran, an Israeli official telling the Jerusalem Post, quote, "We presented the American administration with evidence of Iran's breakthrough towards a nuclear bomb." This is the point that Iran had reached the point that they could make a nuclear bomb, and the Israelis believed that they were going to. There was full and complete coordination with the Americans. This is the Jerusalem Post quoting an Israeli official. Glenn, to you, the Israelis don't put planes in the air over hostile territory without a way to rescue pilots. And I think about the amount of risk now that the Israeli Air Force was willing to go through. Take us through what their plans would have to be able to rescue folks.
I think that's one of the things about some of these special forces or the intelligence components that they have on the ground. As we know, they are fantastic in around. Those forces that they have would be really one of the extraction devices if anything was to happen where somebody had to eject to get that down. At the same time, how much are they pre-positioned? We don't know, but that would be one of the big things. But you have to also remember, as the general was referring, the strikes that they did before, that gave us a big eye-opening experience. When they did that, all their radar, all their AAA, all their assets lit up to look at the Israelis months ago. That tells the Israelis where all these sites are. So it's basically highlighting all their aircraft defense, missile defense systems. So that was a great thing for the Israelis to plan and go into this. And so that's one of the reasons why it also decreases the danger for the Israeli fighter pilots. The F-35s went in really unchallenged, and I'm sure that's what they used tonight with a lot of the intelligence.
Yeah, needed F-15s as well for the bunker busters to get it into the nuclear facilities. Senator, wanted to get your response. We presented the American administration with evidence of Iran's breakthrough towards a nuclear bomb. There was full and complete coordination with the American. Are we going to start parsing the words between coordination, approval,
and
on and
knowledge?
on?
Knowledge and coordination is they're in completely different areas. That's like an orange and apple. They're
both fruit.
Yeah, they're both fruit, but they don't taste the same. And so my point is informing and coordination is 2 different things that may just simply be lost in translation. But I will go back and say this: we won't sit idle if Iranians are going to try to punch us in the face over Israel. But at the same time, I believe that we will be standing with Israel if Iranians are going to try to escalate this even farther. But the point that was made by a proxy war or a covert war is very real. And I would say that if Israel, which, as we can all agree on this panel, is the absolute best at intelligence gathering in that region, if they are taking this so serious back home, then they probably know a lot more about the capabilities than any of us sitting on this panel does.
Joel?
Yeah, look, I'm going to agree with that, and I think that the trigger perhaps this week from the public messaging perspective was the IAEA censuring Iran for its illicit nuclear behavior. First time in 20 years. Deeply
They're a little late to the party.
Deeply troubling. No, but what that does, that gives the Europeans cover and concern, that gives the public imprimatur from a third party that their behavior on the nuclear file has gone too far. And that
gives the Arab world, it also gives the Saudis, the Qataris, the Emiratis.
Have we seen any statements from any of the other Arab nations?
We have not. And look, Mick brought up the point from the very beginning, whether or not they use Saudi airspace, which would have required.
They can get to Iran without going over Saudi, but it's really hard to.
Well, it's a lot longer. General Newton, to you, a senior IDF official talking to Channel 14, which is one of the big news channels in Israel. We brought an unprecedented achievement, a significant blow to the top of the Iranian army and the Revolutionary Guards. In addition to nuclear scientists, the executors are. I think that's lost in translation from the Hebrew. We have a long and extensive offensive plan for the days ahead. We have complex days ahead. The Iranians will respond. If the public is disciplined, there will be few casualties. We are at war. Just from a military standpoint, dissect those sentences and how it's different than when the Israelis struck Iran a year ago.
Well, first and foremost, I think it's setting the obviously the conditions for a longer engagement, days, perhaps even weeks, for Israel to continue to apply pressure, if not continue to attack Iran, number one. Secondly, I think it's also making sure that the Israeli people know that the Israeli government has got this. They really understand the conditions that they're moving forward with, that there may be some, some extreme asks of the Israeli people, but nonetheless, they're going to prevail. The third part of this is I believe that Israel has demonstrated with its capability, and certainly with its Air Force, with its intelligence and even special operations, that it will prevail in this conflict. But Israel's got to be ready. The Israeli people have to be ready for a counterattack from Iran. And so I think it's all in that crucible, Leland, that they're really trying to not only set the expectations, but manage the expectations, especially in the coming hours and the coming days.
Yeah, and as you point out, this will be a sustained campaign.
Thank you for watching. Subscribe below and download our NewsNation app right now on your phone, and you will get fact-based, unbiased news for all Americans.